Here are 3 superfoods I like to give my kids. These little guys heal your gut. This stuff improves your digestion. And these are loaded with vitamins and minerals, because sometimes kids just need a little boost in their nutrition. Now, as I show you how to make these, I'm also going to be rating them in 3 categories. Number 1, cost. How cheap or expensive are they to make? Number 2, edibility. Do they taste good? Will the kids actually eat them? And how do they eat them? And 3, convenience. How easy or difficult are they to make and store? Let's begin with these little jigglers. To make these, you need 2 ingredients, juice and gelatin. Today I've selected to use orange mango for one and apple spinach for the other. But this is where you can get creative. You can use grape, watermelon, cherry, peach, basically anything except pineapple or papaya, since those won't work. A juicer allows you to be creative, kind of pick and choose flavors you're in the mood for. My kids can't wait for watermelon season to come around again, and those produce a ton of juice. And a couple of flavors I've been wanting to try is orange carrot cinnamon and strawberry lemon. So again, be creative and have fun with it. And obviously there's the option of using a boxed juice, which is totally fine. Because as fun as juice is, it's only one ingredient of this superfood. The most important ingredient is gelatin. It has 11 grams of protein per serving, but most importantly, it has 2 amino acids called proline and glycine, which help to build collagen, connective tissue, fight inflammation, repair skin, and the lining of your intestines. Just make sure you get a good quality gelatin. I've been using this one from Great Lakes for many years, but you can use any gelatin you can get your hands on, just make sure it's grass-fed. A good quality gelatin is what makes this a superfood. Now it's a 1-to-1 ratio here, so for every cup of juice that you have, add 1 tablespoon of gelatin. Just spread it out over your juice and let it bloom for about 3 minutes. It'll start to look all wrinkly, which my kids think is hilarious. Then transfer it over to the stove and put it on over medium to high heat. Now you're just simply going to stir it all up with a whisk until the gelatin is completely dissolved. Now feel free to add a little bit of sweetener to it. It may need it, it may not, depending on how sweet the juice was that you used. Just stir it until it almost comes to a simmer and then pull it off of the heat. It should take about 5 minutes or so. Then pour it through a mesh strainer into a glass or silicone dish. Whatever you have should work, you just want it to be roughly ½ an inch deep. Even a small sheet tray would work for this, I think. And I did the same thing with my apple spinach one, just the dish was a little smaller is all. Then into the fridge it goes to chill for roughly 1 to 3 hours, or just until it's firmly set. Then all I do here is just cut them into some squares, and you of course can do all kinds of fancy shapes if you want to, but I just keep it simple. Make sure to scrape the edge, and use a strong spatula to scoop them out. I simply call these gelatin squares. They should be a little jiggly, and be firm enough to hold together well. Now you can store these in an airtight container in the fridge for up to 10 days. I like to pack these in my kids' lunches or as an after-school snack for a little energy boost, which they use up very quickly.
Whoa!
Alright, cost. Now good quality gelatin is going to run you anywhere from 60 to 70 cents per tablespoon. Fruit juice just depends on what kind you're using, but for me, combined total of everything for both of these was about $11. Which is not expensive, but it's also not cheap. So I'm going to give this a cost rating of 6. Edibility. I mean, they're great. And you can make them with whatever fruit you want. You can make them as sweet as you want. The kids love them. I mean, it's sort of like eating Jell-O. So I'm going to give this an edibility rating of 9. Convenience, there's a few steps involved here, but for the most part, it's pretty simple. And they store in here in the fridge quite well for about a week, even though they may not last that long. So I'll give it a convenience rating of 8. Which brings us to a total of 23 out of 30. Alright, let's move on to the second superfood, sauerkraut. And this one is actually incredibly easy. It has profound health benefits. It also only uses 2 ingredients, cabbage and salt. You can use a knife or a mandolin slicer, whichever you prefer, just thinly slice up your cabbage. Now here I'm adding 2 strong pinches of salt, but for the sake of accuracy, you need about a 2% salt solution here. So for every 100 grams of cabbage, you need 2 grams of salt. Then using your hands, give the cabbage a thorough massage to incorporate all of that salt. Then just set it aside and let it rest for about 10 minutes. Then grab a clean mason jar and start stuffing that cabbage into the jar, making sure to press it down firmly. And you can see here that the salt made the cabbage release some of its water, creating a solution, and this is important. So go ahead and pour most of that liquid in. Then use some device like a mortar or a wooden spatula or even the back of a spoon to press down the cabbage. 1, so all the cabbage actually fits into the jar, and 2, so all the cabbage is beneath the surface of the liquid, getting rid of the oxygen and effectively making an anaerobic environment, which is perfect for fermentation to occur. Now this part is optional, but I just have this perfectly sized stone that I cover in saran wrap and use to press down my cabbage and hold it in place. I don't know if this really helps, it's just something I've been doing for years. And I place the whole jar into a bowl just in case it leaks, and set it somewhere in my kitchen where it will then rest for the next 1 to 2 weeks. Now the longer it ferments, the more healthy bacteria will grow, and the more sour it will taste. Here's a jar that finished fermenting just a few days ago, so you can see the difference between start and finish here. I usually ferment mine for about 10 days. The good bacteria is what makes this a superfood, and the health benefits here are amazing, improving everything from digestion and nutrient absorption, even to your mental health, and is a critical part of your immune system. Now I usually serve this up with like an egg scramble or some smoked sausages for breakfast, and that works well for my daughter. But my son is not so easily convinced, so he does better with more flavor when I serve it in something like a taco or a nice bowl of chicken and rice. He knows it's really good for him, but it takes a little bit more encouragement for him, whereas my daughter will just eat it straight out of the jar like a crazy person. Alright, cost. This is cheap. It's like $3 a jar, so I'm going to give it a solid 10. Edibility. It's a bit of an acquired taste. I think it's delicious, but there's only so many ways to eat it. And if you have a picky eater that doesn't want to have this, it can be a little difficult. So I'm rating this one a 4. Convenience though, this one really takes the cake. It's extremely easy to make and it stores in the fridge for weeks on end. So I give it another solid 10. Which gives the sauerkraut a combined total of 24 out of 30. Let's move on to the third one, which is sprouts. And this one's fun because it's very hands-on. You germinate some seeds, you watch them grow every day, and then you harvest your bounty. It almost feels like gardening, but easier. All you need is a mason jar and some sprouting seeds. I get my seeds off of Amazon, just for the convenience factor. And there's a lot of good seed companies out there. I would just recommend that you choose one that's organic. And the process is very simple. You just pour a few teaspoons of seeds into your jar, and then you pour in some clean water, and let them sit there and soak overnight. Except for broccoli sprouts, they only need about 2 hours of soaking. This will mimic the germination process and cause the seeds to sprout. Now I use one of these mesh sprouting lids to cover my jars, which are real convenient, and I can leave a link to that below. But you could also just cover it with some cheesecloth or even a coffee filter. You just need something to catch the seeds while you're pouring it out and rinsing it every day. Because after they're done soaking, they're going to need to be watered twice a day. I usually do mine once in the morning and once in the evening. Nothing difficult here, just pour in some clean water, swish it around for a few seconds, dump it out, and then I like to spin my jar just a little bit to make the seeds kind of stick to the outsides so they're not all clumped together. Then the jar needs to be placed at an angle or upside down if you have one of these sprouting lids, so that the excess water can drain out over time. And I just put it on a plate to catch the water, and then just place it on your counter somewhere out of the way so it can rest peacefully. And each seed will be a little different, but on average, they should sprout within 1 to 2 days and grow for about 4 to 6 days until they're ready to enjoy. Then simply pull them out and place them into a colander or a salad spinner, loosen them up a bit, and give them a thorough rinse. And as you rinse it, you'll notice that the hulls of the seed will start to separate off, and this is totally fine. You can still eat them, there's no problem with that, but this rinsing method is a convenient way to kind of remove a lot of that. And afterwards, you want to lay them out on some paper towels to dry a bit, unless you're using a salad spinner, in which case you just spin to dry. Now, sunflower seeds are some of the most tasty sprouts, but they take a little extra effort and time to separate out the hulls. I recommend getting your kids to help out with this project. I think the little extra time is worth it, but that's up to you to decide. And I think one of the best ways to store them is in an airtight container lined with a paper towel. And these will store in the fridge and be good for about up to a week. Now, sprouts are not only tasty, but they're loaded with vitamin C, vitamin E, A, K, B vitamins, and all their natural enzymes, making them very easy to digest. And broccoli sprouts in particular are loaded with an anti-cancer compound called sulforaphane. In fact, the sprouts have been shown to contain up to 10 to 100 times more sulforaphane and things like vitamin K than fully grown broccoli does. So even a small amount can be powerful at preventing disease. Now you can of course eat these just as is. I commonly put them in salads, on my kids' sandwiches or wraps, and I've even put it on things like nachos and pizza. So there's a lot of different ways you can eat it. All right, cost. These are very cheap. I mean, they cost maybe $1 a jar, so I give it a solid 10 for that. Edibility, you can eat them by themselves and they are tasty, but there's just so many different ways to use them. So I'll give that a rating of 8. For convenience, they're pretty easy. You do have to soak them and keep an eye on them while watering them every day. And once they're sprouted, you can store them in the fridge for about a week or so, but you do want to eat them up in that amount of time. So I give them a convenience rating of 7, giving the Sprouts a total of 25 out of 30. Overall, I'm very satisfied with these. Like I said, they're some of my favorite superfoods. I think they're awesome, and I think you're awesome. So get into your kitchen and make something super for someone you love.
See all those green trees? They're green because they're next to water. There